Hey everybody, welcome again to another exciting episode of the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. I am your host and moderator of the Crowdsourced Politics podcast, Cypher here, and today we have a really good show for y'all, covering the news that was of the last week with the kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. But before we get into that, we want to make a few announcements. First up, we want to talk about the fact that we do YouTube Shorts. We do those typically Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when it's not too cold. Anyways, it's been freezing here in Texas for the last few days. Lost power yesterday. That's how cold it's been. Some of the trees had fallen on power lines and transformers blew and stuff like that. So we're not doing that when it's cold, but once it warms up again, probably next week we'll get back on those. But typically speaking, I'll just do like a minute of news on a particular topic while I walk my dog, so you get to see really cute dogs while getting some news. But yeah, my dogs are precious and they are beautiful, so be sure to check those out. We also are going to be doing more essays. So when I say essays, I really mean it. It's going to be a deep dive into like a particular topic, similar to what you would get from like a regular podcast from like NPR or from like the New York Times or something like that, where we'll do 30 minutes to about an hour on a thing that's happening in the news, but makes it a little more timeless. Things about, structural stuff, philosophy, that sort of thing. We're going to be doing those a bit more often. Probably at least once a month, starting actually probably in this month. We'll probably have one at the end of the month. So that's the plan. The goal is to also do that. So you can get those on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, and we'll definitely have an announcement when we release the first one, or at least the first one redoing the series for this year. So yeah, be sure to check those out. And we're also going to be doing more debates, more, kind of roundtable content, either with myself and other people across Twitch and the YouTube political spectrum, streamers or what have you. So be sure to find those as well. We're still doing Cypher State. Cypher State's going to start back up this month as well. And we're also still doing Praxis Run. Praxis Run's going to be a little harder to get going, but we're hoping to get a lot more people involved in that with some interviews. So yeah, those things you can find wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube. The Praxis Run episodes and the Essays episodes and some of the other things that we're doing will not be live streamed. You'll have to check those out in post-production. It's going to just be better that way. And also it's going to have be helping with the timing and things like that. So if we're like interviewing multiple people for a particular subject, then it will be easier to just do that ad hoc kind of thing, and at least do those once a month. Yeah, that's what we're doing over here at Crowdsource Politics. So yeah, we hope to see you share those videos, like those videos, comment, subscribe, do all that jazz. Speaking of, if you like our content, please smash that like button right now on the algorithms over at YouTube. We are streaming on YouTube as well. Please go do that. It does help us out a lot. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the show. As I can find my video. There. All right, welcome back, everybody. So at the top of the news, we will begin, as always, with updates on Russia's war in Ukraine. So turning first to reporting from The Guardian, Ukrainian Deputy Defense Minister Anna Maliar said yesterday that fierce fighting continued in eastern Ukraine, where Russian troops are trying to gain ground near the strategic logistics hub of Lyman. Russian forces are trying to make gains that they can sow on the anniversary of their February 24th, 2022 invasion, said Ukraine President Zelensky. Quote, a definite increase has been noted in the offensive operations of the occupiers on the front in the east of our country. The situation has become tougher. Weapons and training from the West continue to flow to Ukraine, but a decision to provide fighter jets remains elusive. Britain's Defense Secretary Ben Wallace has said that he doesn't think it's the right approach for now to send Ukraine fighters Britain's Defense Secretary Ben Wallace has said he doesn't think it's the right approach for now to send UK fighter jets to Ukraine. He said it was not a solid decision, adding, quote, I've learned two things, never rule anything in and never rule anything out. The Prime Minister's spokesman said it could take years to fully train a pilot to fly a British fighter jet, adding that the Britain's focus was on, quote, how we can help Ukraine defend their country and push back this year. The UK statements came as its former Prime Minister Boris Johnson called on Western leaders to, quote, give the Ukrainians the tools to finish the job, including heavy tanks and planes. Addressing the Atlantic Council in Washington, Johnson urged the West to stop focusing on Putin and focus entirely on Ukraine. Two U.S. officials said that a new $2 billion package of military aid to be announced as soon as this week would, for the first time, include ground-launched small-diameter bombs, or GLSDB, a new weapon designed by Boeing. The cheap guiding missile can strike targets more than 150 kilometers away, roughly 90 miles. A large increase over the 80-kilometer range of the rockets fired by HIMARS, systems which changed the face of the war when Washington sent them over last summer. That would put all the Russian-occupied territory on Ukraine's mainland, as well as parts of the Crimea Peninsula seized by Moscow in 2014, within range of Kyiv forces. The EU's diplomat, Joseph Borrell, has announced doubling of the number of Ukrainian troops to be trained by the EU to 30,000 this year. He also promised £25 million for mine clearing, He also promised £25 million for mine clearing in areas recaptured by Ukraine. following up on reporting from last week on the ongoing anti-corruption actions in Ukraine. Security services searched the home of one of Ukraine's most prominent billionaires on Wednesday, moving against a figure once seen as Zelensky's sponsor in what the authorities call a wartime anti-corruption purge. It came as Kyiv has secured huge pledges of weapons from the West in recent weeks, offering new capabilities. Last week, he purged more than a dozen senior officials following a series of scandals and graft allegations in the biggest shakeup of Ukraine's leadership since the invasion began. And finally, EU leaders will take part in a wartime summit with Ukraine on Friday, which Kyiv hopes will help its bid to become a member of the EU. Senior European officials arrived in Kyiv today in what European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen tweeted was a demonstration that, quote, the EU stands by Ukraine as firmly as ever. However, EU officials are unlikely to offer Ukraine any concrete promises during the meeting, and full membership is likely to be years, if not decades, away. And that, my friends, concludes our segment on Ukraine. How y'all doing? Y'all doing good? Normally that segment takes about a little more than 10 minutes, but we're good. We're going to continue on here. Got some lot of stuff to cover, so we're going to keep going. So let's now move over to U.S. politics, starting with the House of Representatives. And of course, we can't not talk about the debt ceiling battle. All the hemming and hawing about the debt ceiling is all political brinksmanship, but it's important to talk about because the consequences of the decision, one way or the other, is going to be marked on America for the years to come. So reporting from NBC News recounted Reporting from NBC News recounted an important historical moment that informs President Biden's current stance on the debt ceiling. Let's look at a video clip of that first, here over on MSNBC News, where they talk about it. Oh, yeah, actually. Yeah, I had this marked. Now I can't see it. Come on. There we go.
Some of their top aides are
oh, hold on. Let's turn that up. Go.
On the couch, and they are just mystified. They're stunned by what had happened. They had negotiated with House Republicans on the debt limit. Negotiations did not go well. It brought the U.S. within days of economic calamity, and they had narrowly averted the cliff. It could have been disastrous for the U.S. and global economy if they didn't find a way in the final moment. And they had all...
It should be noted here that what he's talking about is, of course, the debt limit fight that happened between Obama and the House in 2012. Was it 2014? Whichever. Point of the matter is that because of this debt limits fight, the U.S. credit rating actually got downgraded from AAA to AA. Which is, oh, thank you, Nikki. It's 2011. So it happened in 2011. The U.S. had its credit rating by credit agencies downgraded from AAA to AA. Still a very good rating, but still not that great little bit of good news because of the fight that happened here. Well, let's listen on as this reporter recaps what happened.
Come to the conclusion, sitting in the Oval Office at that moment, that they had made a big mistake. They thought they were doing the right thing in holding these negotiations, and they ultimately decided it was a massive self-inflicted wound because it had taken a toll on the economy, even though they had averted the worst of it. So fast forward to...
Yeah, that great toll that he's talking about is the downgrading of the credit rating, which increased U.S. cost to borrow money. And while you can say maybe the U.S. doesn't need to borrow money, blah, 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 whatever, right? It's still how the current system is set up, and that still increases the cost for everything the U.S. government does, which ultimately ends up costing American economy additional money. Because any money that's gone to financing the debt rather than doing things is less money circulating in the economy, which means less growth. And it should be noted here that Democrats really thought that they engaged in this debate or this negotiation in good faith. And the Republicans at the time were just having none of it. This is right after the Tea Party took over. This is the first like kind of stab that they had at Obama. And they were really trying to get to their constituents, their moneyed interests, their people that think that the government shouldn't spend pretty much anything on anything, right? That was where the fight started. Ultimately, Obama won that fight, but it wasn't as political of a win as what should have happened due to how the economy was running at the time. So let's continue on, though.
Present day. 12 years later, Joe Biden is the president and facing down a new Republican-controlled House that is similarly demanding spending cuts as a price for raising the debt limit. And he is executing on the lesson that he and President Obama believed they had learned in that 2011 Oval Office meeting, which is no negotiations on the debt limit. They'll negotiate on the budget, but not with the threat of default on the table. Speaker McCarthy says that is not acceptable to him. Let's play what McCarthy said yesterday on CBS.
Well, if he's changed his mind from his whole time in the Senate and vice president before, I mean, he literally led the talks in 2011 and he praised having those talks. This is what he's always done in the past.
All right, so let's talk about this a little bit before we continue on with the copy. And what this is basically the Republican Party that existed pre-Obama no longer exists today. It really doesn't. It is basically kind of a new Republican Party. And since it is a new Republican Party, new negotiation tactics need to happen, as well as understanding what the ideology of the Republican Party is and how to address that new ideology. This idea that like, holy, negotiated with Republicans on this before and they thought it was a good idea, ignores how much change has happened over the last decade. And I think it's disingenuous to be just like, well, he was fine with this when he was in the Senate. Well, he's not. One, the Senate doesn't exist as the way it used to do. Two, he's not in the Senate anymore. He's an executive. It gives you a whole different look about how things should happen. Especially, as I've already mentioned, the parties have changed. But let's continue on, though, here. So members of the Obama administration, including then Vice President Biden, agreed that going forward, quote, nobody can use the threat of default or not increasing the debt limit as a negotiation tool, said a former Obama official involved in the fiscal discussion. At the time, the U.S. had just suffered its first credit downgrade. The downgrade happened solely due to what Standard & Poor's said at the time was the bitter standoff between President Obama and Congress over raising the debt ceiling, calling it a debacle. Markets were rattled. Consumer and business confidence was shaken to its core. Stocks took a massive hit, and the recovery from the Great Recession was in question. Democrats averted the cliff by acceding to $2 trillion in spending cuts that the GOP had demanded after negotiations on a grand bargain broke down. But Obama and Biden agreed that their mere threat of default had taken a serious toll. Quote, they said, this is a sad lesson we've learned, the Obama official said, describing the mood in the room. Continuing on, he stated, it was an unimaginable self-inflicted wound in 2011. It's against the backdrop that now President Biden positions himself on the apparent willingness of the narrow Republican House majority to once again hold the U.S. economy hostage. The ransom, line item budget cuts for programs. And apparently, not even the defense budget is safe this time. According to The Hill, top House Republicans say that the Pentagon's budget will be on the table, and they have placed a bullseye on wokeness in the military. Again, it isn't that the fact that they don't want defense spending. They don't want defense spending when it is against their cultural proclivities. They call the military woke because it is no longer It's no longer in lockstep with this Judeo-Christian bullshit that it was during the Bush years. That's all it is. The special forces aren't infiltrated by a bunch of people looking to do another crusade. Those people are out now. They retired. It's in with new people that came of age after 9/11, and they have different priorities about what the military should be. They have a different cultural look because they are from a different generation. Had the military still been like against trans people entering, against women entering combat, against gay people being in the military, promoting good marriages, things that the Republicans believed the military did back in the heyday of the 90s, this would not be on the table. Make no mistake, that is what this is about. Hence the focus on the woke military. And how do I know, you ask? Well, I am a former enlisted person. I served in the U.S. military from 2011 to 2018. 7 years as a signal intelligence analyst. I was enlisted because competition was fierce for officers. But I still enlisted and served my country with distinction and got out at the time that my second enlistment ended. So when I tell you these things, please take it as some sort of having an insight into what some of these people believe. Because all these things were mentioned at some point by politicians, by church leaders, by some people even in the military, complaining about the fact that they had to take equal opportunity training that got just a little too close to touching on subjects like the patriarchy, systemic racism, and the like. I just thought I should frame this a little better so y'all can understand. But we should continue on. So exactly what that means isn't as unclear as it probably once was now. Now you know. But Speaker McCarthy and others in his caucus have pointed to programs including efforts to diversify the military, identify alternative fuels, because by golly, if we have a solar-powered tank, well then big oil can't make as much money. And other environmental initiatives. Now, the environmental initiatives thing, this is key too. Okay? So, for people that don't know, military bases have to follow federal EPA guidelines, probably a bit more staunchly than others because they're always under the look of the federal government. And so the federal government can set its own standards for its own buildings and other things like that. And the military is no different. And when we talk about things like discharging sewage and chemicals that the military uses, this can have international implications, especially when bases are overseas. This is something that I had to experience, and there was a protest over how Camp Humphreys in South Korea, near Ajanri, near Pyeongtaek, was dispelling its chemical waste. They were supposed to be treating it better. Apparently there was a spillage, and they found some sort of like foam or something in the local waterways, and so there was a protest, as there should have been, because we're supposed to be able to take that stuff and clean it up as much as we can and dispose of it better. But there was like heavy rain or something like that. It wasn't like a done on purpose sort of thing. It wasn't just like, fuck it, let's put it in there. But that's why they have to follow these things, right? But Republicans don't like that. Because who are you to tell the U.S. military what to do? Goddamn heathen. Continuing on though, quote, "We're going to cut money that's being spent on wokeism. We're going to cut legacy programs. We're going to cut a lot of waste," Republican Representative Mike Rogers of Alabama said, the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, in an interview to The Hill on Wednesday. Let me go ahead and repeat that. Continuing on though, quote, "We're going to cut money that's being spent on wokeism. We're going to cut legacy programs. We're going to cut a lot of waste," Republican Representative Mike Rogers of Alabama, the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, told The Hill on Wednesday. When asked specifically what programs they will push to cut, Rogers said to stay tuned to subcommittee hearings. Republican House member Austin Scott of Georgia told The Hill that if Congress needs to make cuts in the defense budget, Quote, let's start with the woke ideology and finish up with the bureaucracy. Okay, bureaucracy, fine. There's things that could be eliminated from the defense budget about pencil pushers and certain things. But the whole woke ideology thing they're talking about equal opportunity training, things that make the military kind of follow laws around, I don't know, diversity, around promoting people, about not, when I say promoting people, I mean, at a time, there was an issue of people being passed over for promotion because of their race, gender, sexual orientation. With focuses on those things, you can have a more diversified military, and a more diversified military means a more cohesive and well-run military, especially if people feel like they can actually be promoted on the merits. It has to be on the merits. And if people are being excluded from that for any reason that isn't for a merit reason, well, that's just going to tear down good order and discipline. But they don't like to hear that. They don't want to be told that, hey, you know, that's kind of odd you don't have any women generals. Maybe there should be more women generals. Whoa, 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 whoa. You can't have that. Where's the meritocracy in forcing us to promote a woman? I don't know. What's preventing you from doing it now? Is it actual meritocracy, or is it just cultural bullshit? You know the answer to that. Continuing on, he stated, quote, the recruiting and retention in the military is at an all-time low, and the DoD needs to quit focusing on woke ideology and focus on the mission of supporting our warfighters, Scott said in a statement. The reason that the military is at an all-time low is because of what America's done in its foreign policy. That is why young people are not joining the military. They don't want to be weapons of war. They want to be used as such. And sure, there might be some people from the South or Midwest that are culturally more Republican than others and a bit more conservative in their leanings that might think that the military is just not for them anymore, simply because, I don't know, they have a lady drill sergeant or something. Maybe that's the case. But who cares? Okay? Maybe, just maybe, you could pay people a bit better in the military. Let's start with that. People that are on the bottom rungs of the military get paid like shit. Especially if they're married. Like, yes, there's a bit of extra given for like basic housing allowance and stuff if you're married. It's not enough. If you're lower enlisted. And given the structure of the military and the fact that people join the military a little bit older lately, for a variety of reasons, college, starting late life, later, what have you. Not everybody gets in the military at 18 anymore. You might need to raise some people's pay just to encourage them the ability to have a family. I knew a person that got stuck at a rank simply because their job was full. They had no slots available for higher ranked people because in their job they had too many people. And it's a quota system. It's literally a quota system. Even though you can have the best soldier in the world, if there aren't spots available for you to promote, you're not promoting. And this person had a wife and kid. And they were not always, but a couple of times had to rely on charity in order to make ends meet. And why was that? Because they weren't high enough rank to support a family. Isn't that a little messed up? I think it's a little messed up. And this is a common occurrence. It's pretty ridiculous. So, what ended up happening with this person is that they changed jobs and they were able to promote. It took them a bit of time to change jobs to get the job that they wanted. They had to go through training. They had to also wait a little bit in order to promote in that job, but that's what ended up happening. We lost a great person in the job that they were in to another job in order for them to be able to support their family. But it is what it is. So let's continue on though. So the Defense Department, So the Defense Department has an Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion that could be a target along with its programs and long-standing strategies. Quote, deal with spending when you're spending, Democrat Representative Bill Keaton of Massachusetts, a member of the House Armed Service Committee, told The Hill. Continuing on, he stated that, quote, there is a place, obviously, to talk about making cuts in defense, but it's not in the White House when you're talking about the debt ceiling. Keating said cutting diversity programs would be insignificant in terms of reducing spending and also weaken the military. Quote, they did not come out of thin air, the congressman said of diversity programs. They came from listening to members of our military. The ultimate goal for Democrats is a clean debt ceiling bill before our recovering economy collapses under the threat of a debt ceiling default as it did in 2011. And let's talk about this just a little bit more before moving on. Hey, appreciate the follow. Appreciate the follow. I could not read your name. Let me see what your name is. Thanks for the follow, Nyla Thub. Throteb. Appreciate the follow. Sorry I butchered the name. But let's continue. Let's talk about this just a little bit more. So, what does it mean if the government defaults? Well, it means that, one, pretty much every creditor in the world is not going to trust the United States government to make good on its debts. Two, this is all money that's already been guaranteed to be paid. And by guaranteed to be paid, I mean a bill passed that budgeted this money, and the expectation is that that money will be paid out. Programs have already started for various different things. I don't know, like the Inflation Reduction Act, putting money towards fixing bridges and roads. These are things that the government still needs to pay for. If you stop paying for it because of a debt ceiling issue, then you have half-finished projects that end up costing the U.S. economy and U.S. taxpayers more in the long run due to lack of maintenance and the fact that you have a job half-finished and that has its own problems. Not only that, it is probably actually illegal from a constitutional standpoint and will trigger a constitutional crisis because of the 14th Amendment. 14th Amendment states that, I'm going to get the actual direct quote here. Let's see, 14th Amendment debt. So the 14th Amendment states about public debt that the viability of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. Now, let's break this down. So, you know what a comma clause is, right? So a comma clause means that this is like, hey, this is including but not limited to what is said in this comma clause, right? So you have basically what you put things in parentheses and this is like an example. So what you can read this from a legal standpoint, from an English standpoint, from a common sense reading of the English language standpoint, is that the vitality of public debt of the United States shall not be questioned. Period. That is what the 14th Amendment says. So maybe this is something that isn't even actually allowed. I don't know. This is like originalism, right? That's what the courts are supposed to do. Courts are supposed to be very conservative and not want to see things get ruffled up too much. They're going to invalidate the 14th Amendment with this? I don't know. You think Roberts is going to allow that to happen? I don't think so. The other ones, I'm not so sure. But it should be noted that that is what the 14th Amendment says about public debts in Section 4. So, not only are Republicans playing with the economy, they're doing it out of just pure partisan ideological bullshit, because it's not like they actually care about the debt. They want to use this as a wedge in order to get things taken away that they don't like. They're playing with a constitutional crisis because this is going to go to the court should it not happen. I believe Biden would actually do something to actually subvert Congress in this. Whether it's just demanding the Treasury issue more bonds, doing something like some finagled thing about like minting the coin or whatever. Even if this is done, this is still going to have negative economic consequences. To a degree, it's still going to be negative. It just might not be like disastrous as not paying off debt or paying on debt. So I don't know. But that, my friends, does conclude the section on the news roundup. So we're glad everybody's joining. Glad everybody's here, having a good time. Since you're just joining us, welcome. We do this every Thursday from roughly 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to roughly 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, covering the news that was with the kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. So we're talking about U.S. Congress right now, and we're going to continue on with those subjects. And of course, we have more news. And this one is going to be a story that keeps on giving. And of course, I am talking about George Santos. All the lies, all the grift in one little man. You'd love to see it. And it couldn't happen to a better party. All right, so let's talk about it. So House Republican George Santos has made the news almost daily since early January, and not for good reasons. Called a fabulist by some news outlets and a proven liar by others, CNBC reported this week that Santos has stepped down from the 2 House committees to which he was assigned. Hey, he's taken a little bit of responsibility. Maybe that's good. I don't know. Santos said that he won't serve on any committee until the slew of investigations into his campaign and personal finances have concluded. He has repeatedly said that he will serve out his full 2-year term in office, arguing that the voters of Long Island should have the final say on whether or not he stays or goes. He basically wants that partisan. He wants, 1, the partisan advantage, 2, the incumbent advantage, because he knows that people are less likely to vote him out if he has the incumbent advantage. And also, there's really no way to force him out. A Republican, the majority is too thin, and if they try to force him out, they say, "Hey, you can't serve. You're too much of a liar." That triggers a special election in his district, and that might give Democrats another win, possibly, and that is not good news for McCarthy. There's no appetite to kick him out by either party, honestly, because as long as he stays, he's a punching bag for both people. So that's what it is. Now, if that is his rationale, though, he should know that the voters in Santos districts aren't keen on keeping him around either, according to a new poll released Tuesday morning. An overwhelming 78% of registered voters in New York's 3rd congressional district, including 71% of Republican respondents, says Santos should resign. The survey was from Newsday and Siena College. More than 4 out of 5 respondents view Santos unfavorably, according to that poll. Notably, 71% of the respondents said it was wrong for McCarthy to seat Santos on multiple committees. And most recently, the Federal Elections Commission was asked to make a referral into whether Santos's campaign committed a crime when it listed as its treasurer a person who claims he had previously declined to take the job. The FEC, the Federal Elections Committee, pressed Santos' campaign for more information after learning that it, quote, may have failed to include the true, correct, or complete treasurer information in a recent campaign filing. So not only has he potentially broken the law with campaign donations, but he's not been on the up and up about who's run his organization. Probably because it was a slush fund used to launder money of some sort. But wait, that's not all. Not only that, the Department of Justice has asked the FEC to pause any action against Santos as it pursues its own criminal probe into the congressman, according to reporting from the Washington Post as of last Friday. Santos also faces federal ethics probe and an investigation by Nassau County Republican prosecutor Annie Donnelly. New York Attorney General Letitia James' office also said that it was looking into Santos's related issues. But wait, there's more. A probe by Mother Jones revealed that more than a dozen donors who contributed significant amounts of money to Santos's 2020 campaign do not appear to even exist. When I said it was money laundering, like 3 weeks ago, people need to listen to me more. It's proving to be more and more the case every day. So Santos's campaign reported that Victoria and Jonathan Rigor had each contributed $2,800 to his bid for this House seat. But after searching through various databases, Mother Jones found that no one in the United States with such names even exist. Where did money come from, Santos? Where did money come from? What are you lying? What are you hiding? What are you doing? Y'all bad. Y'all making me mad. This is ridiculous. So we've got Russian oligarchs. We've got him being a con artist, him looking to launder money, it seems like, taking big giant contributions from huge Republican donors that want him to pass certain laws. Which is par for the course, don't get me wrong. That's like the least of the ones we're talking about. And now we have people that didn't even exist on his FEC filing. If you're going... Okay, look. There's ways, and I'm not advocating for these. I'm just showing you how stupid he's being. There are ways to get around this. He could have easily just paid somebody to make the donation. No one would have known. Couldn't even bother to do that, dude. Couldn't even bother to do that. Now, these alleged donors listed their address as 45 New Mexico Street in Jackson Township, New Jersey. But even that was questionable since the numbers of New Mexico Street and Jackson end in the 20s. Oh, God. Why? Bro. And I am Tiberius. Thanks for asking. I'm having a good time. Really? You couldn't even write down a good fake address? My God. He really thought no one would look into it at all. He really thought that. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. Jeez, dude. How is that so... How are you so bad at this? My dude. So these contributions are among more than a dozen major donations to the 2020 Santos campaign for which the name of the address of the donor cannot be confirmed. Somehow, George Santos' campaign finance scandal just got a lot worse. The watchdog group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington said on Twitter, questioning whether Santos donors even exist. And Democratic voting rights attorney Mark Elias tweeted, quote, "If the Santos campaign fabricated donors, I would expect federal indictments soon. That would be a serious crime and an easy one to prove and prosecute." So what are we talking about? Let's see. I need to get your comment up here. So essentially, Naran, we are talking about the fact that George Santos made up people that donated money to his campaign, which is kind of like a thing that someone might do if they're trying to hide where the real source came from and possibly be engaged in a money laundering operation. That's what we're talking about. George Santos, Republican, 3rd District of New York, is a lying scumbag. And it just keeps getting worse. But that does conclude our segment about George Santos today. There's more, though. There's more. There's more to cover. There's more in the house. So let's go ahead and get into it. And now we have to talk about the fact that Representative Ilhan Omar has been removed from the Foreign Intelligence Committee. So NPR reported this afternoon that House Republicans voted to remove Minnesota Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee, citing past controversial comments she made about Israel and concerns over her objectivity. Until the last couple of days, it appeared that McCarthy did not have the votes to carry out this action. But the vote today was 218 to 211 along strict party lines. The resolution stated that, quote, Omar has disqualified herself from serving on the Committee of Foreign Affairs, a panel that is viewed by nations around the world as speaking for Congress on matters of international importance and national security. Representative Max Miller of Ohio, who is one of two Jewish Republicans in the House, said in a statement that Omar, quote, cannot be objective decision maker on Foreign Affairs Committee given her biases against Israel and against the Jewish people. Omar, who herself has faced anti-Muslim bigotry since taking office, told reporters last week that the move to remove her from the committee was purely partisan. To a degree, purely partisan. In an emotional speech on the House floor, Omar said that she is being targeted for her identity as a Muslim immigrant from Africa. Quote, is anyone surprised that I am somehow deemed unworthy to speak about American foreign policy, or that they see me as a powerful voice that needs to be silenced? But I did not come to Congress to be silent, stated. We got to talk about this a little bit, though, because there has been controversial statements that Ilhan Omar has said, and we have to be fair about what those were. She has, on all accounts, for the ones that were like a little, that's a little bad, maybe even more than a little bad, has apologized and addressed those issues, made amends with Jewish colleagues, or what have you, right? There's been a whole swath of these things done. By that, I mean, there's been like 2 or 3 really cringy ones that were like maybe made me even scratch my head. I'm like, what are you doing? But really what it boils down to, for the most part, is that Ilhan Omar is not a staunch supporter of Israel. And she supports people that are engaged in things like BDS, or boycott, and divest and sanction movements, because of what Israel does to Palestinians. So, but we're going to have to talk about some of those controversial comments. So I'm going to go ahead and pull some of those up here. I do not have them prepped ahead of time. So yeah, in 2021, a group of Jewish House Democrats condemned controversial comments made on Twitter by Ilhan Omar in that year. Let's see, what were those comments? Oh, come on. So she, in the comment, where is it? Come on, just give me the quote. There's issues equating terrorist organizations. So yeah, in this one, what did she say? So on Monday, I asked, this is a quote from her. On Monday, I asked Secretary of State Anthony Blinken about ongoing international criminal court investigations. Omar said in a statement, to be clear, the conversation was about accountability for specific incidences regarding those ICC cases, not a moral comparison between Hamas and the Taliban and the US and Israel. Was that her, Nikki? I'm not sure if that was her. I thought that was Talib. Was no way in saying that the U.S. is comparable to those directly or the same level. Let's see. This was the comments that she was partly censured for by Democrats for anti-Semitism comments. Oh no, it was the mind control. Ilhan Omar. I'm pretty sure that's the one. Mind control. Yeah. In 2019, Ilhan Omar had said something about that. Trying to get the quote up here. Sorry, it's taking me after claiming she was unaware. Okay. Yeah, blah blah blah. I just want the direct. I want the tweet. I don't want all this like partisan fuckery. Yeah, she didn't say Jews though. That was the thing. She said Israel. Ilhan Omar, speaking to CNN, Dana Bush, membership released Omar said that she certainly was not aware that the word hypnotized was a trope. Continuation of knowingly said these things. This is obviously absurd. 2012. Yeah, she tweeted all about the Benjamins, baby. Yeah, she did say that. Okay. So, I want these tweets, man. I don't want this. I want these direct. Here we go. Sorry, I'm normally not this bad at like having this shit. Either way, she made a comment about like Israel's hypnotized the world about its atrocities it's committed against Palestinian people. There was also the one about the all about the Benjamins when they asked about why AIPAC has such influence over Congress, etc., etc., etc. There was like, that's two of them. There's two of the bigger ones, the ones that are a little more like, ooh, you shouldn't have said that. But more by and large, it's because she takes a hard stance against what Israel does in the occupied territories, as well as the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, because of how Israel treats Palestinians. We would not accept this kind of treatment by other countries against other peoples. We would be condemning it well throughout of this, and that the fact is that we don't. And the reason we don't isn't because of like a giant Jewish conspiracy like some right wingers want to talk about. It's because of Christian Zionism, by and large, because of the things that are engaged in Christian Zionism. They believe that Israel should go, all of Israel, all of biblical Israel, all the land of Judea, should go back to the Jews. Because without it, they cannot summon Jesus. Jesus cannot come back without Judea being controlled by Jews. So that's a big component of it. Another component of it is that the United States views Israel as a close ally due to kinship from people, because there is people that view Israel as being part of like the Western view of the world, as well as the fact that it is kind of a bulwark against some of the more autocratic governments in the Middle East. And if we can have them focus on Israel, they might not focus on us, and all that kind of stuff as well. There isn't some giant Jewish conspiracy or anything like that. Various intersecting, what's the worst word for it? Alliances. Various intersecting alliances. Various intersecting... Oh, there's a word. What's the word I'm looking for? Can't think of the word right now. Anyways. And that's why it's happening. So, yeah. But that concludes our segment about that. So let's talk about more stuff. So investigation committees are starting to gear up, and the House Republicans kicked off their promised investigations into Biden administration yesterday with hearings on border issues and pandemic era spending. So the House Judiciary Committee, chaired by Ohio Republican Jim Jordan, opened with a hearing Republicans called the Biden Border Crisis Part 1. But before the committee even got to the border issue, an hour-long debate occurred over an amendment to the panel's rules that would require members to recite the Pledge of Allegiance each time it convenes. That's very strange. What? Jesus Christ. Let me guess. Okay. If I have to guess, this is another member of the Freedom Caucus virtue signaling over bullshit that makes their that gets people in their base really rock and hits them in the fifis, right? True. So it was Republican Matt Gaetz introduced an amendment to the rules that would require members to say the Pledge of Allegiance, because of course he did. Virtue signaling nonsense that can line his pockets and energize the base to keep voting for him with things that don't actually matter, that are just cultural signals over things that somehow are important because of rituals and loving America are really what we need to be talking about. Now, with that said, Democrats attempted to tweak the amendment to bar anyone who had supported an insurrection from leading the committee in the pledge. Because of course they did. Okay, fair enough, I guess, right? Fair enough. And New York Democratic Representative Jerry Nadler objected to note that House members already recite the pledge on the floor every day. So it's already been done. It's already been done. Why do it again? Because he wants it for the cameras. He wants it for the cameras. So lawmakers debated the issue across the aisle in a heated back and forth before the amendment passed unanimously in the GOP-led committee without the insurrectionist clarification. Then Jordan and his fellow Republicans on the committee laid into President Biden, reiterating their frequent complaint that the president's policies have made the border unsecure and allowed for an influx of fentanyl and other illegal drugs into the United States. This is laughable. He went on to say that, quote, under President Trump, the border was secure. Under Biden, there is no border and Americans are paying the price, Jordan said in opening remarks. This is laughable. Like, this is basically my guy was in charge, so everything was fine. Fentanyl into the United States went up every year under Trump. Every year. From the border, from not just the border, but legal points of entry into the United States. Why? Because it's easy to get through. So this isn't like an unsecure border. It's we don't invest money into things that we actually care about. So we could, and we have rights. You're not allowed to just search any vehicle for any reason crossing anywhere. So we have rights, and people cannot do things without probable cause. So it's very easy to come into the United States with drugs. And it should be stated here, we're not talking about people driving across the border with drugs in their cars, their vehicles. Now, that does happen, but the vast majority of drugs that enter the United States come through ports of entry for goods and services. We're talking shipping yards. We're talking semi-trucks. We're talking drugs being hidden in, coconut containers. We're talking about drugs being hidden alongside, useless dolls for cheap dolls being sold at Dollar General. That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. Never mind the fact that fentanyl is pretty easy to manufacture. So, what? You're just gonna lie? It's gonna outright lie. How do Republicans even believe this shit? It is patently false. It is easily verifiably false. You can go on Fox News and find complaints about this from Trump's presidency. This idea that Trump just magically held the border secure is bullshit. Full on, not true. Okay. He didn't have it like a tight knit ship where nothing got through. Biden doesn't have a worse off situation when it comes to the border because of policies either. At least not democratic policies. People are trying to enter the country because the rest of the world is getting more unstable. So more people are trying to enter the country. People that were prevented from entering the country under Trump, with Trump's remain in Mexico policy, which he just paid the Mexican government to kind of enforce. There was no like, we got a good deal. Now he just gave them money. Okay. He gave them goods, gave them services, tweaked NAFTA a little bit to their favor for it. It was used as a negotiating tool to get them what they wanted. Well, that policy ended, not because of Biden, but because of the Mexican president. Because that deal was only negotiated while President Trump was still in office. So you had 2 million people sitting at the border, and then they're like, well, Mexico's not here anymore, so the Mexican government just removes whatever it was doing to try to keep them there. And so with COVID and everything running rampant and the conditions deteriorating on the border, more people decided to try to leave. It's as simple as that. But I just can't, I can't stand this level of just lying. This is just a lie. It's nonsense. Not only that, but Republicans pointed to an increase in illegal border crossings under Biden. There were more than 250 encounters at the southern border in December, the highest level of Biden's presidency so far, according to newly released data from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Over the last fiscal year, there were about 2.4 million encounters at the U.S.-Mexican border, up from about 1.7 million in 2021. However, and we should note this, encounters are not a per-person measure. The term encompasses people who have made several attempts to cross the border. So this whole idea of 2 million people are trying to flood into the United States is also bullshit. Studies of the people that had been captured and sent back showed about roughly 75% of the people that had been encountered by Border Patrol officers were already tried to come over before. So 2.4, what's 75% of 2.4? Let's do that math real quick. 2.4. 2.4. Yeah. Times 0.75. Talking about roughly 180,000 people. So yeah. No. That happened. So while illegal border crossings dropped to about 450,000 in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a little over 850,000 encounters at the border in 2019. Democrats counted that. So what this means when we say that people stopped trying to cross the border during the pandemic, we're saying that basically the pandemic caused people to be afraid to even attempt, because what if I get COVID? What if I get sick? Am I going to die there in the desert again? Like, not again? You know what I mean? Well, yeah, obviously people are going to be a little more fearful if there's a disease running rampant that prevents them from being able to have even a modicum of safety of trying to cross. This should make sense to everybody. For their part, though, Democrats countered that the blame for problems facing the southern border cannot be placed solely on Biden. Quote, "The hearing is titled Biden's Border Crisis. This is completely wrong," said Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu. Continuing on, he said, "It is not Biden's border crisis. This has been a crisis for over half a century, for Nixon and every American president after him. The only folks that can actually fix this problem is the United States Congress by passing laws," he added. And it is true. As long as there are desperate people south of the border that have the ability to travel, they will travel to the border to try to get into the United States. As long as we make it almost virtually impossible, and I mean that, it is impossible for people in the Northern Triangle, so that is Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras, and Nicaragua, right? Is it Nicaragua? No. Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico. I think those are 3 countries. It's virtually impossible for anybody between North and South America, basically, or between the United States and South America. It is impossible for anybody in those countries to migrate to the United States legally. There is no wait list. There is no line. There is an inability to enter the United States because our immigration system is broken and it needs to be fixed. And Republicans need to get out of the way of fixing it. It is Republicans that stopped the comprehensive immigration reform bills back in 2012. Yes, in 2012 and in 2006. It wasn't Democrats. It was Republicans. They have the cards. They can get off their ass and actually try to fix something. Instead of complaining when Biden does something that actually gives people a way to apply for asylum in their home countries and say, oh, it's just legalizing illegal immigration. Remember, they say that. What they're complaining about is immigration. Period. Furthermore, though, several Democrats also noted that Biden has continued several Trump-era border policies, for which he's taking a lot of heat from members of their own party. Biden has kept in place the controversial Title 42 policy, which has allowed the United States to turn away asylum seekers amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Judiciary Committee Ranking Member Nadler, Democrat, suggested that the panel's GOP majority hastily threw together Wednesday's hearing to try to beat the Oversight and Accountability Committee to the border issue in, quote, the last spat in an ongoing turf war between Republican chairmen of the 2 panels. Again, Biden has made a policy that allows people from Venezuela and a couple of other countries that I can't remember the name of right now to apply for asylum within their country of origin at a U.S. embassy and go through a process and be able to legally come into the United States without coming to the border, and thus increasing the amount of resources being taken at the border in order to deal with the number of people. I want to say that it's like 90,000 people from combined from these three or four countries. And Republicans are like, no, you're just legalizing illegal immigration. Really? Come on. It's bullshit. But that concludes this segment of the News Roundup. Speaking of Oversight and Accountability Committee, on Tuesday, the Oversight and Accountability Committee examined pandemic-era relief programs aimed at keeping Americans afloat as COVID-19 hit the country, which Republicans say was a waste of funds and vulnerable to abuse. Quote, we owe it to Americans to identify how hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars were spent under the guise of pandemic relief were lost to waste, fraud, and abuse, and mismanagement, Chairman James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, said. Not wrong, but there's more to the story. So Congress greenlighted trillions in COVID-19 relief through initiatives kickstarted in the early days of the pandemic during the Trump administration. More than 1,000 people have since pled guilty or have been convicted of defrauding the government's relief programs. It should be emphasized here that the day after Congress passed the relief program, under Trump, he removed the bill's requirement of a dedicated inspector general who would have overseen all expenditures, because it wasn't written in the law to mandate it. So remember those PPP loans that were supposed to be taken out just to employ more people or to keep people paid while the government while the COVID-19 was running rampant and everybody just basically losing their jobs because people weren't going out and spending money. Remember that? Well, the treasury secretary, what was his name again? Mnuchin. Steve Mnuchin. The guy that with his wife held up all those $100 bills. That's actually Mnuchin holds hundreds. Well, yeah, him and his wife. We're gonna get that up on screen right now. This douchebag. This guy. Remember this guy? Remember him? Remember, like, look at his wife. Like, look at that. Like, yeah, he wanted to be a big Hollywood executive type. Remember this guy, Mnuchin? Well, he was supposed to oversee the trillions of dollars given in PPP loans. PPP loans were actually a very good thing. But because he was like, you know what? We're going to give it out, no questions asked, and we're going to give it out through the banks because the banks know what they're doing, right? They don't. They helped cause the 2008 crash. We don't have to worry about it. And that's where a lot of the fraud came from. You had people like Marjorie Taylor Greene taking PPP loans. You had people like Lauren Boebert taking PPP loans for virtually no reason. PragerU, a organization that does everything virtually. Everything. It does not have people come in to their office much to do anything. Not that they would prevent that from happening anyways during the pandemic. To keep them employed. This organization is funded by billionaires. Funded by the Wilkes brothers. Oil tycoons in Texas. Dominionists. Okay? They took hundreds of thousands of dollars in PPP loans. And because there wasn't oversight of this, of them or anybody else, some people created fake businesses to take PPP loans. And since the oversight wasn't there, the money just kind of coasted out and went to the ephemeral United States. So, when we talk about regulation and keeping things tight-knit, when Republicans talk about how we owe it to the Americans to identify how hundreds of billions of tax dollars spending went under the guise of pandemic relief or lost for various reasons, remember to remind them it's because they didn't care about where the money actually went until a Democrat was in office. But that concludes that segment on Congress. And, well, to finish up Congress and to do a little more pontificating about subjects that I find oh so dear and near to my heart, we are going to talk about the floor vote that happened today on socialism. Because what is a Republican House committee without a real slug out fight, a real diminution of anything that could be described as socialist? So, what happened? Well, the House Committee on Rules yesterday put forth a concurrent resolution to denounce the horrors of socialism. Democratic Congressman Maxine Waters took the Republicans to school in this one because this was funny. The question was stupid. And, you know, if they're going to set them up, you just got to knock them down, you know. They make the jokes too easy sometimes. We're going to turn over to the Tweeter bird and listen to this exchange here because it was gorgeous, beautiful.
The fact that this isn't passing.
Oh, hold on. Turn that up a bit. Boom, boom, boom. There we go.
The fact that this isn't passing on just says everything about my friends across the aisle. You can't condemn socialism. In your opening remarks, you were talking about Putin.
Now see, they still believe, and they're right, that socialism is a swear word. It's a dirty word still. People don't know what it means. Republicans have bastardized the freaking definition of the word so much that it doesn't mean anything in the United States, which we'll get to later. But yeah, let's listen.
Kim Jong-un and see,
Oh, let's rewind that because I cut it off too soon. Let's go ahead.
Socialism. In your opening remarks, you were talking about Putin, Kim Jong-un, and Xi. You know what they all have in common, right?
Trump.
Trump? North Korea, China, and Russia?
He loves Kim Jong-un.
That's quite the intellectual leap. I would say communism. Would you like to denounce any communist leaders?
Well, I don't know what you're asking. Let me. The leader of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, has made often glowing, described authoritarians like Kim Jong-un, who is condemned in the resolution. Regarding North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, Trump said, Kim wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters, and we fell in love. You sure you want to hear the rest of this?
Okay, so we just had to point that out because that's funny. And it was just too easy for her to not state that. So a floor vote on the resolution, though, was held today, and Fox News reported on the outcome of that vote. As a group, Democrats narrowly voted in favor of the resolution by 109 to 86 tally, even though every Democrat who debated the bill spoke against the resolution. In another sign of how the bill split the party, 14 Democrats voted present. Ultimately, the resolution passed 328 to 86 thanks to unanimous support among Republicans. Democrats justified their voting by saying while they oppose socialism, the decision to call up the measure is a warning shot that Republicans are looking to cut Social Security, Medicare, and other social welfare programs. Because they have been saying that these programs are socialist in nature for decades, and they're talking about it, and they're still planning on cutting these programs. Don't let them like pull the wool over your eyes with cultural war bullshit that doesn't matter in the grand. Okay, let me restate that. It matters, but don't let them use that in order to, ignore the man behind the green curtain over here, okay? When they try to cut these programs that people love and need. It is true. They have stated they want to increase the retirement age. That's cutting Social Security. They have stated they want to make Social Security be more akin to a stock option, letting people to play in the market. That is cutting Social Security because it's cutting a guaranteed benefit by putting a benefit into the stock market. They have said they want people to pay more into Medicare. That is cutting Medicare. These are cuts. Don't let them lie to you. That said, after California Democratic Representative Brad Sherman pointed out several historical political leaders who were socialist and argued that not all forms of socialism deserve condemnation. McHenry thanked him for acknowledging that. Democrats do not have a soft spot for the system of government. Quote, this resolution would simply draw out my Democrat. Let me restate that whole thing, all right? So after California Democrat Representative Brad Sherman pointed out several historical political leaders who were socialist and argued that not all forms of socialism deserve condemnation, McHenry thanked him for acknowledging that Democrats do have a soft spot for this system of government. Quote, if this resolution was quote, if this resolution would simply draw out my Democratic colleagues to just say, yes, they are in favor of socialism, maybe this is all worthwhile. To be clear, socialism is broadly understood to be an economic and political theory that calls for putting the means of production on an industry level into the hands of public collective through various different kinds. So while democratic socialism is seen as a philosophy, it calls for a heavier government hand that might approach the government styles of some European nations. Let me repeat myself. Socialism is not just the government doing things. That is how America defines socialism. It's how Republicans define socialism. Do you want to know why a lot of younger millennials and Gen Z people think socialism is freaking just great and awesome? Absent the fact that, the economy kind of sucks for young people. It's because Republicans have been saying anything that government does that is good is socialist. But it's not simply the government doing things. That's not socialism. That can be a whole host of different things. It can be investments. It can be corporatism that no one likes. Well, no one likes, right? We know some people like corporatism. Okay. Populist Republicans can like corporatism as long as that corporatism is supporting people that buy into their cultural proclivities, right? Democrats can like corporatism to a degree when it's doing things, I don't know, for like the environment or something. We can call it that. We can call it welfare capitalism. But it's not socialism. You don't have socialism just from the government doing stuff. Socialism is giving the profits of the economy, essentially, to everybody, to a collectivized group of people, generally seen as the workers owning the means of production, either through themselves or through the state. That's socialism. And with that, we got to talk about how some of the people online just don't get it. First up, we have Brianna Joy Gray. I don't want to hear a word about my denouncing the Democratic Party come election season because she supports socialism, which is fine, I guess. I don't know. Does she really support socialism? Probably not, to be honest. Just the way that she acts and talks about things. People like to call her a grifter. I don't watch her enough to call her a grifter. But I do know some of these responses were pretty fucking dumb. So here's a response to that. Here's me saying, here's one, right? So Social Security and Medicare are two most popular government programs, and they are also the two most socialist programs. And I came out and said, no one defines socialism in this way in reality, though. And like, it's this other person, it's literally the definition of socialism. My SS tax pays for someone else. That's not socialism. It's welfare. It's welfare capitalism. The majority of the world follows a mixed market economy style and has welfare. The difference between the United States and other countries that are outside the Nordic model I honestly believe the Nordic model gets the closest to socialism that we can expect to actually have happen and have it work. But it's still not entirely socialist. That's why it's called social democracy. Okay? Based. Okay, Nordic system's based. Okay, I like the Nordic system. It's still not necessarily socialism, at least as defined. I do believe, as I said, it is the closest that we can get to socialism in reality, and therefore maybe we should call it socialist. But as a part of a theory, the workers don't directly own the means of production. The government doesn't own the means of production. It's not collectivized in that way. So it's not technically socialism. Might do a whole thing about why I think it should be called socialism, but it's not really. So yeah, I just wanted to point those out. Pretty ridiculous, honestly. These people, man, they don't know what they're talking about. Again, socialism is not the government doing things. It is democracy entering the workplace, essentially. And the profits from democracy entering the workplace going to the workers. Co-ops, a form of socialism. Benefit corporations, not a form of socialism. You see the difference? Do you understand it now? But yeah, I just had to point those out. But that concludes our segment on this. All right. All right. Well, we have to continue on. So we're going to talk a bit about what's going on in the Senate now before we continue on to other things. So the In the Senate, the news happening in the Senate now is light this week as Republicans work on assigning committee seats, so this will be a brief update. First up, we have McConnell denying Scott and Lee appointments. So as reported by the New York Post, Senator Minority Leader Mitch McConnell booted 2 Republican lawmakers from a powerful Senate committee yesterday. This comes after an unsuccessful attempt last year to oust him from his longtime leadership position. Senate Republican Rick Scott of Florida and Mike Lee of Utah are no longer members of the Senate Commerce Committee, which oversees issues related to interstate commerce, science, and technology policy, and transportation. According to Scott, it's personal. Quote, "This is what happens when you challenge leadership," Scott said in a statement to the New York Post on Wednesday. It was McConnell's decision to remove someone who has actually run business and ran the 3rd largest state from a committee I've served on for 4 years, Scott said. And he's not wrong. You're going to come for the Reaper. He's going to get you. Now, the junior senator from Florida, elected governor of Florida in 2010 and re-elected in 2014 before successfully running for U.S. Senate in 2018, mounted a failed bid for the top GOP spot in the Senate shortly after the 2022 midterm elections. Scott's effort to oust McConnell, who has been the GOP leader in the Senate since 2007, was strongly backed by Lee, who gave one of the nominating speeches for Scott's takeover bid. McConnell fended off the challenge with the support of 37 senators, while Scott got 10 votes and 1 senator voted present. The GOP leader insisted last year that there were no hard feelings about the challenge. McConnell, let's see if I can do this. "I'm not in any way offended by having an opponent or having a few votes in opposition," McConnell said after his re-election. "I'm pretty proud of 37-10. Get you a little bit of the McConnell voice. So according to The Hill, though, McConnell will appoint first-term Senator Ted Bund of North Carolina, Eric Schmidt of Missouri, and J.D. Vance of Ohio to the Commerce Committee in place of Scott, Lee, and Senator Ron Johnson, a Wisconsin Republican who left the panel to take a seat on the Senate Finance Committee. In addition to that news from the Senate, we also have Democrats trying to introduce gun legislation. So Reuters reported that a group of U.S. Senate Democrats introduced legislation today directing the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, to create rules banning the marketing of firearms to children, including the JR-15, which has become a target of gun control advocates. The planned legislation comes roughly a week after Democrats publicly called on the FTC to probe the marketing techniques of gun manufacturers We Won Tactical. My God. These names, they're so cringe. We won. Okay. Yeah, like little one, but we won, so we can say we won. Oh, God. Oh, fuck. Why are you doing this? Why is this so cringe? And the JR-15, come on. Bro, I am not anti-gun, but these names have got to go. They've gotta go, man. Holy crap. That is so cringe. Jesus Christ. So the legislation, though, known as the Protecting Kids from Gun Marketing Act, would give the FTC the tools to go after gun manufacturers. Regulations already restrict the marketing of alcohol, tobacco, and other products to minors. Quote, "A junior version of the AR-15 has no place in a kid's toy box," said Senator Ed Markey, the lead sponsor of the legislation. Neither the FTC nor We Won Tactical immediately responded to a request for comment. The company has previously said that its JR-15 was designed to allow adults to safely introduce shooting and hunting sports to the next generation. Okay, you can do that with BB guns. You don't have to make it Okay. All right. You know what? I gotta look this up. I gotta look up what this gun looks like. Jeez, come on. We're doing it. We're gonna put it up on screen. All right. So we're gonna have kids in school walking around with this beauty. Ugh, it is literally just a condensed version of the AR-15. That's all it is. There's no difference to this. Like, look at this. Like, this is what it looks like. What's the caliber on this? It's still 5.56? .22. Okay. At least it's a 22. Okay. Okay. That's good. But still, man, it can still kill somebody, and that's not big at all. I could probably fit that behind my back. I'm a small dude. Jeez, man. Again, I am not anti-gun. I'm just not. It's just what it is. But should we really? I don't know. Like, something has to be done, honestly, though. Okay. I will accept that we have a gun culture society that can't be changed once Republicans, or not even Republicans, once gun enthusiasts, super gun enthusiasts, admit that the price of freedom is more death. Until then, I'm going to believe that there are things that we can do that do limit the ability of people to commit mass shootings with weapons. Just weapons. Doesn't matter what gun. Doesn't matter the type of gun. There's things that we can put in place that don't overly burden a person's ability to legally own a firearm while limiting people's ability to get them illegally and for nefarious purposes. It just is. So yeah, that's my shout out to you. Not Republicans, because this is not just a Republican thing. Gun enthusiast. If you can admit that the price of owning weapons in the society means more death, then I will admit that there's nothing that can be done. There you go. We got more news to cover, and so that concludes that segment, and we're going to cover more news. We got about 30 minutes left in the newscast, so let's go! Let's get to it. So we got some news bites up for you, and these news bites are a little bit of sprinklings, a little bit of things that are a little titillating and might be good in the future, but they're not as meaty as the politics in Congress. Well, let's get into it. All right. So in a trending story this week, MAGA Republicans are having a fit because DirecTV announced its decision to drop the far-right news program Newsmax from its services. MAGA World claims that the network was dropped due to the radical left demonizing conservative voices, and that it's just one more example of cancel culture. Fierce Video reported on this story. So pay TV provided DirecTV. So Fierce Video reported on this story. Pay TV, provider of DirecTV, has dropped conservative news channel Newsmax from its satellite system after the parties were unable to reach terms for a new agreement. The move comes amid a blowback from some House Republican lawmakers who have accused DirecTV of trying to stifle conservative views by not carrying the network at all. The cancellation comes as Newsmax requested higher carriage rates that would have been passed through as increased costs to customers. Quote, on multiple occasions, we made it clear to Newsmax that we wanted to continue to offer the network, but ultimately, Newsmax demands for rate increases would have led to significantly higher costs that would have to be passed on to our broad consumer base, a DirecTV spokesman said in a statement to Fierce Video. Continuing on, they stated, anyone, including our customers, who watch the network for free via Newsmax TV YouTube.com, and on multiple streaming platforms like Amazon TV, Roku, and Google Play. So, in other words, DirecTV paid Newsmax money, paid Newsmax money for the carrot or the channel to broadcast on DirecTV. Newsmax wanted that payment to increase. DirecTV's like, we can't support that because we still run a business and our customers pay us, and they're very price conscious with all the alternatives to cable and satellite TV that exists now. I don't know if you knew, Newsmax, but even you are on YouTube. You put your stuff for free on your own website. Hello? Like, really? You want us to charge every customer, I don't know, just pulling numbers out of my ass here, $10 more a month so that you can be on our system? There's no benefit for us in this. You give away your content for free. Why should we do this? The answer is there is none. Newsmax being on DirecTV was actually a subsidy that Newsmax got from a conservative owner and CEO. That's the part they don't want to tell you. Yep, that's what it was. But let's continue on. So ahead of dropping the network, Wesley Hunt, a Republican in the House of Representatives, sent a letter signed by more than 40 members of the House Republican Conference to CEO of DirecTV, AT&T, and TPG Capital, saying that the company, quote, is moving to deplatform Newsmax by denying it cable fees on a fair and equitable basis. The letter cited DirecTV's move last April to drop conservative network One American News Network, claiming it came from an encouragement from Democratic members of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Where did they get this from? Stupid. The letter also claimed DirecTV carries 11 liberal news and information channels, specifically calling out Vice Media, which the lawmakers assert appears to receive higher fees than Newsmax is requesting, despite having a fraction of the audience. So the crux of the disagreement, though, according to the letter from DirecTV, is that Newsmax wanted to change the existing deal model and is now requesting fees. According to DirecTV, it previously waived its typical rights to sell 2 minutes per hour of Newsmax advertising time, which allowed the network to generate more revenue, and agreed that the network could be distributed on streaming platforms for no charge, including those that do not pay TV subscriptions. Those non-pay TV viewers represent 55 million households, or 40% of U.S. households, according to the letter. DirecTV has also implored the elected officials to keep Newsmax's popularity in perspective. The letter cited Nielsen's data as showing Newsmax's nationwide average household audience as only 101,000, reflecting less than 0.1% of the total households. That is 92% lower than Fox, they stated. If Newsmax ceases to authorize our carriage of their channel, our customers will still have access to their clearly preferred conservative news channel, Fox News, which has more viewers than MSNBC, CNN, and Newsmax combined, wrote DirecTV. DirecTV earlier this month notched a court win in a lawsuit brought on by One American News when a judge ruled in favor of the pay TV provider, determining it was well within DirecTV's rights to drop OAN and wasn't required to renew a carriage deal. End quote. So, let's say this again. Newsmax gives its content away for free. It was trying to force DirecTV to pay them more money. It was trying to prevent DirecTV from selling airtime to ads that it would take in itself to generate more revenue. What's in it for DirecTV? From a business perspective. Come on, conservatives. You're supposed to love business. You're supposed to have business sense. You're supposed to be about the money and the right of businesses to do what they kind of want to do. You're supposed to be good at economics. You're supposed to be good at business sense. What the fuck? Just can't, man. Like, this doesn't make any sense. This is literally crying over spilled milk. It's not like these channels aren't going to get viewership because they're not on direct TV. Stupid. Oh, Jackinard, what is this nonsense now? So, Jackinard, I don't know what you caught, but we just wrapped up talking about the fact that Newsmax wanted to force DirecTV to pay more for their free cable bullshit. Their free news bullshit. We just talked about. That segment will be sliced up and put on YouTube to be aired separately. But we have to continue on though. So let us continue on now and talk about the ever-present classified documents searches that just won't stop going. This is something that I'm going to talk about at length in a separate video. It will be probably one of those things that I talk about the entire history of the classification system, why we overclassify things, why we underclassify some things sometimes, and why everybody just doesn't really understand this. But we have a little news blip for you. So what is going on? Well, the FBI has searched President Biden's Roboff Beach home in Delaware this week and found no documents with classified markings. It was announced today that the FBI is expected to search former Vice President It was announced today that FBI is expected to search former Vice President Mike Pence's house in Indiana and an office in Washington for additional classified materials soon, sources familiar with the matter tell CNN. Pence representatives have been in talks with the Justice Department over the searches and have expressed that they want to completely cooperate. Unlike some people, they are actually doing the right thing, which is another thing that we'll talk about in the big segment, in the one that we talk about all the things. And why? You know what? Some Republicans have a point about this, but it's really not comparable. And we need to really get a hold about our classification system stuff. So yeah, that's out of the way now. And, well, we got a new one up. And this one is a win for gun rights activists. And what we're talking about now is a new Florida gun law. So according to reporting from Fox News, Florida lawmakers introduced legislation on Monday to allow people to carry a concealed firearm without having to get a government-issued permit. If passed, the bill will make the majority of U.S. states permitless carry territory, otherwise known as constitutional carry. Quote, "Our right to bear arms, of course, is enshrined in the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution," Republican State Representative Chuck Brannon said during a press conference in Tallahassee. Continuing on, he stated, quote, "The bill that I will file later today continues to advance Second Amendment freedoms through legislation known as constitutional carry. This bill is a big step to let the average law-abiding citizen to keep from having to go through the hoops of getting a permit from the government to carry their weapons." Brandon introduced HB 543 on Monday alongside Florida House Speaker Paul Renner and a handful of law enforcement officials who lauded the legislation as a step further to protect law-abiding citizens. Okay, can we... All right. So the police in question are obviously ideologically more towards the right. Okay? Police in general are going to be like that. But anybody that studies policing, anybody that is a police officer, that actually is not being a lying piece of shit, will tell you that the prevalence of guns in America makes it more likely for police to use their gun unnecessarily. Because reaching for something could be reaching for a gun. It should not be a death sentence, but given the way police are trained, and the fact that, well, people just don't want to die, it's going to end up leading to more people being killed by the police. As more and more people are armed in more and more places, the police interact with more and more people like Republicans want, it's going to lead to more people dying. Even people that do everything that they're told to do, even people that have proper permits, even people that are upstanding, law-abiding citizens are likely to get killed by the police. So this idea that police officers are rallying around this and like protecting rights and freedoms and all that, kind of dumb, to be honest with you. Not only that, though, the legislation was also lauded by the National Rifle Association, or the NRA. Quote, "The NRA has worked to pass constitutional carry in half of the country," the executive director of the NRA Institute for Legislative Action, Jason Omet, said. If this bill passes, Florida could become the 26th state to fully recognize your right to self-defense. There is no reason why a law-abiding citizen should have to apply for a government permission slip to carry a firearm to protect themselves and their families. End quote. In addition to support from the NRA and various Republican lawmakers in the state's House and Senate, the Florida's Sheriff Association has also thrown its support behind the bill. Quote, "Criminals don't get a permit, not one of them," Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey said at a press conference. Continuing on, he said, "They don't care about obeying the law. Our law-abiding citizens have that immediate legal guarantee that the freedom to protect themselves. We as Florida sheriffs stand solidly behind Ivey," Ivey added. The announcement comes after some Democrat-led states have enacted gun control measures in recent months, most notably in Illinois, where a law has set off a firestorm of criticism from law enforcement officials. The Illinois state passed its version of the Protect Illinois Communities Act earlier this month, banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines from being manufactured or sold in the state. Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the bill into law. Let me start that over. Sorry. Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the bill into law, prohibiting the manufacture and sale of semi-automatic rifles and pistols, 50 caliber guns, as well as attachments that can increase a gun's firing rate, other bump stocks, things like that. The law also requires residents to register their banned firearms. The law is currently facing legal challenges, including from a lawsuit filed by the NRA last week, and with this Supreme Court, it is likely that said law is not going to stand. Jack Annard, a friend of the show, stated about what we were saying is that, yeah, train cops better, require higher education to become a law enforcement officer. I can carry a firearm just fine if police weren't walking vegetables on average. True. But I think Jack Annard, as I had said earlier, probably when in another segment when you weren't joined us at this time, is that I think you would agree that prevalence of guns does increase gun-related death. At least you can agree with that, I think. You seem to be a sensible person, so I think you would agree. It's just a thing, right? Again, I am not anti-gun. I own a shotgun. I'm likely getting an AR-15. Me, I represent the show, but that's me. That's not everybody that helps produce the show. And I don't know, like, there's stuff that's got to be done. The idea that we're just going to arm teachers to protect schools, I don't like that. I don't think that's good practice either, especially given how some kids treat teachers these days, how some parents treat teachers these days. It's not that I don't trust teachers to do the right thing and not, just shoot a kid. It's that I don't know what the kids might do. And in a situation when there's somebody with a gun, what a teacher's going to do? They're going to accidentally shoot the wrong kid, or are they going to get shot by the cops? Like, it's those kind of things. I'm not sure I agree with having any teacher just being armed, especially without some sort of regulation about like storage and where they can be at and who can do it and training and all this other stuff. Like, that's not a teacher's job, okay? I don't think we should force a teacher or rely on teachers to do this. That should be a trained resource officer that gets the training that Jack Annard had said previously. So yeah, that's where I'm at. But that, my friends, concludes this segment of the News Roundup. And now, we have to talk about another story that just won't die. And don't expect it to go away anytime soon either, because Republicans took back control of Congress. And what story am I talking about? Well, of course, I am talking about Hunter Biden. So let's talk about it in detail. What happened this week? Well, some things. So Hunter Biden pushed back this week on the constant spin about the laptop that was left in Delaware repair shop in April of 2019, according to reporting from NBC News. Oh, before we get into that, I'm going to start that over and clip this out. I just want Jack and Ard to respond to Jack and Ard real quick. Jack, I see your comment. I agree with it. I actually have my ECCW, which I don't know what that means. My issue is this: police lie. They claim they're in a highly deadly job, etc. They're very rarely ever been shot at, let alone shoot or stabbed on the job. And they kill roughly 1,000 people a year. Yes, true. Agree with that. Okay. So let me go ahead and splice that back in, restart the Hunter stuff. So, all right. Hunter Biden pushed back this week on the constant spin about the laptop that was left in Delaware repair shop in April of 2019, according to reporting from NBC News. Lawyers for Hunter Biden sent letters Wednesday requesting investigations into allies of former President Donald Trump, who they say trafficked in stolen information from his laptop. A dramatic shift in strategy for the president's son after years of GOP attacks. Among the letters was one asking the Justice Department National Security Division for an investigation into, quote, individuals for whom there is considerable reason to believe violated various federal laws in accessing, copying, manipulating, and or disseminating Mr. Biden's personal computer data, including Rudy Giuliani, who was Trump's lawyer at the time. Hunter Biden's lawyers wrote a similar letter to the Delaware Attorney General's office requesting a probe into the same people, alleging they violated, quote, various Delaware laws in accessing Hunter Biden's information from the laptop. Information from the laptop has raised questions about Hunter Biden's finances, which have been separately under investigation by federal prosecutors in Delaware since roughly 2018. It has also been the source of several salacious stories from conservative media outlets, many focused on his drug use. Hunter Biden has largely kept a low profile during the years of stories, but a person familiar with the first son's strategy said he has had enough. Quote, this marks a new approach by Hunter Biden and his team. He is not going to sit quietly as questionable characters continue to violate his rights and media organizations continue to peddle in lies to try to defame him, the person said. Giuliani has acknowledged having passed a copy of the computer's hard drive to the New York Post shortly before the 2020 presidential election. The letters to investigators, though, also recommend an investigation into John Paul Mac Isaac, who has said Biden abandoned the water-damaged laptop at his Wilmington, Delaware computer repair store. Quote, Mr. Isaac chose to work with President Donald Trump's personal lawyer to weaponize Mr. Biden's personal computer data against his father, Joseph R. Biden, by unlawfully causing the provision of Mr. Biden's personal data to New York Post, the letter stated. It accused Mac Isaac and others of theft of computer services and said Giuliani and others of possession of stolen property. While Biden has previously deflected comments about whether the various emails and pictures were legitimate, the letters seem to acknowledge that at least some are, but they said Biden is unsure of how much. The letters say evaluating the data has been, quote, exceedingly difficult because for months, neither the New York Post nor its source for the material, President Donald Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, were willing to share that data with the public. Quote, again, more recently, downstream recipients of what has been purported to be Mr. Biden's hard drive have reported anomalies in the data, suggesting manipulation of it, they say. Hunter Biden's attorney, Abe Lowell, told NBC News on Wednesday night that, quote, "These letters do not confirm Mike Isaac or others' version of the so-called laptop. They address their conduct of seeking, manipulating, and disseminating what they allege to be Hunter's personal data, whether they claim to have gotten it." Biden's lawyers also sent a letter to Fox News host Tucker Carlson demanding a retraction of, quote, "false and defamatory statements made by Mr. Carlson on his show about Hunter Biden." The story falsely implied that Biden was involved in a money laundering scheme to finance President Biden's lifestyle by paying him $50,000 a month in rent. That story was quickly debunked, but Carlson never retracted it, the letter says. In reality, the younger Biden was paying for offices space in Washington, D.C. every 3 months that amounted to $49,910. Quote, "We demand that you immediately retract these statements by spending a significant amount of airtime on such retractions," Sullivan said in the letter to Fox News and Carlson. "If we do not receive this written confirmation, we will assume that you both are not interested in acting responsibly and professionally and are willing to reverse its actual malice in reporting." The letter also puts Carlson and the network, quote, "on notice of potential litigation," and demands they preserve all documents relating to the story. As for Mac Isaac, an attorney for Biden sent a criminal referral for the repairman to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. Quote, "Backing up Hunter Biden's files for any repair did not require Mr. Mac Isaac to review the context of such files," a lawyer for Biden wrote. Mr. Biden did not consent to Mr. Mac Isaac's gaining access to the content of those files in April 2019 or any time thereafter. Continuing on, as the Washington Post reported last April, Delaware law indicates that Mac Isaac could assume ownership of the laptop after a year, but he obtained the laptop in April of 2019, at the same time the conservative media were beginning to focus on Hunter Biden's relationship with a Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, and gave it to the FBI that December. In that same report from last April, the Post pointed out that Mac Isaac himself cast doubt on the contents of the hard drive. Quote, I do know that there have, let me rewind that. So Mac Isaac, in the same report from last April, the Post pointed out that Mac Isaac himself cast doubt on the contents of the hard drive. Quote, I do know that there have been multiple attempts to insert questionable material into the laptop, as in not physically, but passing off this information or disinformation as coming from the laptop, he said. Continuing on, he stated, quote, and that is a major concern of mine because I have fought tooth and nail to protect the integrity of this drive, and to jeopardize that is going to mean that everything that I have sacrificed will be for nothing. In other words, Mac Isaac says that he has seen claims about what the laptop contains that do not accurately reflect what he saw on the laptop at the outset. And we will, of course, keep you posted as this story develops. Before continuing on to the next segment, though, let us point out here a couple of other details. So, it is disinformation does not mean all information within a story is fake. Okay? That needs to be stated because a lot of the information that has come out from this laptop appears to be authentic. The pictures, the talk about his business dealings, that's key, as well as some other things, okay? Those appear to be real. They've been confirmed by family reports, etc., in other places. But disinformation does mean that narrative building based on those facts can be misleading or outright lies. And that is where a lot of this comes from. The disinformation, or at least the narrative that has been pushed since this laptop's contents, this laptop, because we still don't know if it came from the laptop directly, but the laptop's contents has been about whether or not Hunter Biden and Joe Biden have been taking money from foreign governments at the detriment to United States security. There is no information presented anywhere in any of the emails that have been confirmed or any of the other documents that have been confirmed on the laptop to indicate this. There is no smoking gun. I'm not saying that there is not going to end up being a smoking gun, but as of right now, there is not one. The entire narrative about Joe Biden from the beginning of his run for president, before he even started to run, when there was murmurs of him running, is that he is a corrupt Washington swamp thing. And they were looking for anything that they could use in order to push that narrative. So, if they have a standard fail son like Hunter Biden getting money for something that people are like, maybe he shouldn't be getting money for, trading in on his father's names, they were going to pounce. And that's exactly what they did. They don't actually care about this from a standpoint of actual ethics. They don't care about it from a standpoint of morality. They only care that it could hurt Joe Biden and therefore Democrats, their political enemies. There should be no question about this. This is partisan. It's not about ethics. It's not about, it's about ideology, but not ideology concerning ethics and truth and protecting government from nasty actors. They don't care about that. They care that it could hurt Democrats, Joe Biden's, liberal, etc. Because that's what this is. Because if they cared about ethics and all this other stuff, they would be passing laws to prevent things like this from happening rather than fighting against them. They'd be passing laws against lobbying. They'd be passing laws against stock trading. They'd be passing laws against even kids of presidents serving on the board of directors of companies from other countries. But they're not doing that because they don't actually care. So with that concludes this segment on the News Roundup. Y'all still with me? Hope y'all still with me. Yeah, I got some good views. Getting some good views today. Some good views for us. Good views. Thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate it. You know what? You're here now. Go ahead and smash that like button for the algorithms. It really does help us out. Hit the subscribe button, everybody. You won't regret it, as our friend Shark Zero says. But let's get into some economic news now. So the Associated Press report. Sorry. All right. So let's get into some economic news now. So the Associated Press reports that the S&P 500 was 1.4% higher in afternoon trading, a day after hitting the highest level since August. Stocks had already been on the upswing through the start of the year on hopes that the Federal Reserve might be set to pause some on its rate hikes to interest rates. A day earlier, stocks and bonds took off after Federal Chairman Jerome Powell said that the central bank is finally starting to see progress in its battle against inflation. Markets took that as a cue that a pause may indeed be imminent, and investors even raised bets for cuts to rates later this year. I don't think there's going to be rate cuts, but I do think the Fed is going to keep to its word about raising rates and not do it again as strict as much as they did last year. In fact, this next rate hike might be the last one for this year, or there could be another small one going into the next quarter. But they're probably pausing soon. Not saying that because that's what investors are saying. I'm saying that because that's what the data is suggesting and what the Feds have kind of stated. Now, there is this idea that maybe the Fed is actually caring more about narrative building and protecting its institutional integrity and the fact that it controls the money supply. And so if people believe that they're just going to they're not going to raise rates, well, they're going to raise them anyways, just to show them who's boss. It's possible. I just don't necessarily see it. Mainly because everybody's worried about a recession. And so you could see another 0.25, we could even see another 2, maybe 3, 2.25s increase to the basis points. I don't see them ratcheting up interest rates above 6%, though. That's just where I'm at. With that said, All this is despite Powell saying on Wednesday that a couple more rate hikes will likely be appropriate to get inflation down to the Federal Reserve's target. He also said he did not foresee any rate cuts in 2023 and again pledged to stay the course until the job is done on beating inflation. Quote, "The market is saying that the Fed has its cake and eat it too. Inflation falling and growth not falling off a cliff so far," said Ella Huxa, senior investment manager at Pictest Asset Management. She said that the market seems to be putting a 75% probability on the Fed engineering a soft landing for the economy, where inflation can drop from its soaring heights without sending the economy into a painful recession. And honestly, if the Fed just does nothing and inflation continues its course now of disinflation, we'll be at 2% inflation. I don't know, what is it? Let's look at it real quick. Let's look at that best fit line here, shall we? Inflation year over year graph, and then images. Let's take a look at this, boys. What is this? Micro trends. Oh, no. Here we go. Cool. So we're going to turn over to this real quick. So this is, can we adjust this? I don't want 20 years. No. Anyways, you can see it here, like it's 9.1% in June. And then boom, it's just like it's going down, right? So if this continues, we're just looking at the 2%, what, next year? Early next year? So the Fed could do nothing and still win, more than likely. They're not going to not do nothing. Does that make sense? They're going to do something. They're likely going to do something, but I don't think it's going to be aggressive. But let's continue on. She said that there's still a risk that the Fed will have to hold a tougher line on rates than markets expect if the U.S. labor market remains tight. And the U.S. labor market is likely to remain a little tight because lots of people died. So that gives her pause as stock and bonds prices rally so strongly around the world. Quote, "It does feel like the market wants to pick pennies in front of a steamroller," she said. U.S. applications for jobless aid fell again last week to their lowest level since April. Further evidence the job market has withstood aggressive rate hikes by the Federal Reserve. It was the third straight week that claims were under 200,000 and the third straight weekly decline. On Wednesday, the government reported that U.S. job openings rose to 11 million in December, up from 10.44 million in November and the highest since July. That would be the lowest number in more than 2 years. A report from Bloomberg said that U.S. hiring is likely to continue to moderate at the start of the year, though still solid wage growth. Let me restate that. So a report from Bloomberg said that U.S. hiring is likely to continue to moderate at the start of the year, though still solid wage growth, an unemployment rate near historic lows, and high vacancies are likely to stiffen the Federal Reserve's resolve to keep rates elevated for some time. Quote, "You're trying to thread a needle," said Brett Ryan, senior U.S. economist at Deutsche Bank AG. Continuing on, he stated, quote, "If it's really weak data, then you worry about a recession, but too strong, it implies a more hawkish outlook for the Fed." U.S. employers in January announced the most job cuts since 2020, according to data compiled by Challenger, Gray, and Christmas Inc. Companies including Microsoft Corporation, Goldman Sachs Inc., and others have announced thousands of layoffs in recent months. Still, overall job losses remains at historic lows. Economic activity may be cooling, but many firms are still seeking to hire and doling out higher wages to lure talent and retain employees. Though the Federal Reserve is moving closer to a pause in its policy tightening campaign, how long interest rates stay high depends in large part on how long it takes for the labor market to turn and wage growth to soften. We could see higher wage growth for a while, and we could see higher interest rates for a while, simply because, again, millions of people died and millions more people exited the job market due to long COVID and retiring early and other reasons. That said, the Fed is still hopeful it can achieve a soft landing, a scenario in which it can tame inflation while avoiding a surge in unemployment. In other words, people slowly come off the rolls of employment. We slowly get back to like 4%, 5% unemployment, and you don't have this massive shock that happens all at once. So you have a little come down, you have a little boop, boop, boop in the landing on the economy, rather than a giant crash and millions of people are thrown out of work all at once and the economy tanks and it's hard to recover from. That's what they're hoping for. But remember, they think everybody having jobs like this and companies having to compete for workers like they are is a negative. Of course they do. They're taking it from the capital view. Don't let them do it. Keep fighting for higher wages. Keep fighting for more rights. Keep fighting for a better living condition. You deserve it. Continuing on though, while some economists expect that the aggressive tightening will ultimately tip the US into a recession, which is what the Fed kind of wants, a slower inflation rate and a steady hiring could help an economy avoid one. And that concludes that segment of the News Roundup. What we got here? All right. Man, my back's been killing me lately. But we're almost done, everybody. We are almost done. So if you haven't watched us before, then you don't know what we like to end our programs with. Every Thursday, we also like to end our segments with some news of the weird. And this week, sometimes it runs the gamut of like being disgusting to interesting to shocking. But this week, it's simply just funny. What are we going to talk about today? Well, today we're going to talk about how A&W Foods trolled Fox News and it worked. How did it work? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. A fast food chain jokingly tweeted out about its mascot's clothing choices apparently cut. Let me restart that completely. A fast food chain's joking tweet about its mascot's clothing choices apparently caught Fox Business with its pants down, according to reporting from the Huffington Post. On Tuesday, A&W Restaurants announced on Twitter that Rudy the Great Woot Beer would start wearing trousers. The post appeared to be a jesting reference to a recent decision by chocolate brand M&M's, which put its spokes candies on indefinite pause after conservative types like Fox News' Tucker Carlson griped that the green M&M character was now wearing tennis shoes instead of go-go boots. The clip will remind you of our reporting at the time. Turn over to that now.
Making
Yeah, there we go.
So in its ad campaigns, Mars set about making its M&M characters as unattractive as possible because when you're intentionally repulsive, it's clear you've got the right politics. So the green M&M lost her sexy boots, the brown M&M her stiletto heels. The orange M&M, meanwhile, became a poster boy for the mental health crisis and would henceforth, quote, acknowledge and embrace his anxiety because America badly needs more neurotic candy. Then late last year, Mars went further. The company added obese and distinctly frumpy lesbian M&Ms to promote, quote, feminism and body positivity.
Ah, yes, Tucker Carlson. We all know that you love them anthropomorphic lesbian M&Ms, you fucking douchebag.
In other words, explained the Mars Corporation, it's good to be fat. Have some more M&Ms. Well, we report...
They're literally a candy company. They engineer their candy to make you want to eat more. Of course they want you to be fat. Welcome to capitalism.
On this at the time and pledged a deeper investigation into it. But before we could complete our investigation, Mars announced that it's suspending its ad campaign. A chocolate vendor promoting obesity was just too shameless even by modern standards.
Was it though, Tucker? Was it though? I mean, it wasn't too shameless for you to jump on board. But anyways, this is what A&W Root Beer's announcement about Rudy Tootie's wardrobe change stated. Let's talk about it. Let's zoom in so you can see it. America, let's talk. Since 1963, Rudy the Great Root Bear has been our beloved spokesbearer. We knew people would notice because he's literally a 6-foot tall bear wearing an orange sweater. But now we get it. Even a mascot's lack of pants can be polarizing. Therefore, we have decided that Rudy will wear jeans going forward. Not to worry though, he will remain our official spokesbearer. After all, he's unbearably cute and impossible to replace. We are confident Rudy will continue to champion good food and good times for many years to come. Now, in denim. Wow, wow, wow. Amazing. Amazing. But you know what? You know what? That could not just be discounted, right? So considering that many corporate characters like Poppin' Fresh, Chester Cheetah, and the Geico Gecko have long opted to be pantsless, A&W's social media staffers probably thought most people would recognize that it was a gag. It was immediately apparent who didn't get it. And those are some of the tweets that we had on this program. Let's go there now, because obviously I didn't have the flip up because I'm a bad streamer.
This. First it was
Stop it. So Fox News, of course, did a little segment on it. You can't make the stuff up,
Finally,
people.
there is this. First it was M&M's. Now it's root beer.
Rudy, root beer.
The Great Root Bear. He serves as the mascot of A&W restaurants. He's now going to be wearing pants. Apparently, according to the company, Rudy's lack of pants was quite polarizing, they say. He's been on the job since 1963. The spokesbear, quote, is a 6-foot tall bear wearing an orange sweater. We knew people would notice.
Seriously?
Even a mascot's lack of pants can be polarizing.
Oh my God.
First it was M&M's.
It's ridiculous.
Now a bear.
It's
has to
ridiculous
have-
that you're
Oh,
taking this at face value, you dumb
What
fuck.
is the problem?
It's just the
Nothing.
woke
It was
police cancel
junk.
culture has
It was
gone
jokes.
ridiculous. Finally, there is this. First it was.
It was a joke. It was a joke. And, well, they said it was a joke. If I open that tweet back up, let's scroll down, because they responded. They responded, is now a good time to mention that this is a joke? Posted January 25th. And this tweet came out. When was it come out? This one was from, similar. So yeah, that's what we got. What do you think though? You have any idea? Were they taking it seriously? Did they fall for the troll? Was the joke just didn't hit right and it was too much? It was too close to the woke agenda? Let me know. Hit me up on Discord, everybody. You can find me on Discord. It's a great time over there. But everybody, with that, I am sad to say that we are actually out of time. We know you liked what you heard because you stayed with us to the end, so please smash that like button for the algorithms. It really does help us out. We want to thank the viewers, all you all who joined us and came in and out and gave us questions, because without you, we would just be people shouting into the void that is the internet, and that's just not fun. At least not as fun as interacting with people. We also like to give special shout out to our Facebook community who helps curate some of these stories by sharing them and letting us know that they exist. And also our producer, copy editor, Nikki Adams, because without her, I would not be able to do as well on this show as I do and cover as many topics. She really does a good curation job for this. We also do other shows, as we said at the top of the show. We do a show called Cyberstate, which is a foreign affairs and foreign policy focused podcast, where you can find that on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast streaming from. We are also going to do more essay-like content, which will be available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast streaming platform stuff at. And we are looking to participate in more debates. So if you want to see me participate in a debate, or you want to just shoot the shit about something, have a good conversation like we did with Counterpoints, you can go ahead and hit us up at Twitter at crowdsourcedpoll. I'm not using it as much as I used to, simply because of the thing that is pinned to the top of the tweet there. So yeah, check that out. But we can do, you can hit us up on Mastodon. So we are on Mastodon at CSP Cypher at federated.press. So if you go to federated.press, you can find me on Mastodon at CSP Cypher there. So everybody, thank you again so much for joining us today, this evening, and we hope you have a good rest of your night. And as we say at Crowdsourced Politics, keep your head up through the political storm.